San Francisco, March 1964. A Wednesday afternoon that arrives the way Wednesday afternoons arrive in San Francisco in early spring, which is with this specific quality of light that comes off the bay at that hour. Flat and cold, and carrying the particular clarity of a city built on water and hills that has no interest in flattering anyone. The fog has pulled back from the Embarcadero by noon, but has not gone far, sitting offshore like something that has not decided yet whether to return. The streets of the Fillmore district move with their usual layered energy, the specific urban current of a neighborhood that contains within it several different cities existing simultaneously, each with its own language and its own understanding of what the street means. The Civic Auditorium on Grove Street is a building that has held most of what San Francisco produces in the way of public gathering over the past 50 years. Political conventions and boxing exhibitions, and the particular organized energy of events that require a large room and a large crowd. And this Wednesday afternoon, it is the site of a charitable sports exhibition, one of those mid-decade events where athletes from different disciplines gather in the same building, for reasons that have more to do with publicity and goodwill than with competition. The kind of event that fills a Wednesday afternoon in March with the specific comfortable energy of people who are not here to decide anything, but are here to be seen being here. Muhammad Ali arrives the way Muhammad Ali arrives everywhere in March of 1964, which is the way weather arrives. 3 weeks ago, he stood over Sonny Liston in Miami Beach and said things into the microphones that the microphones had never been asked to carry before. He said, "I am the greatest." He said, "I shook up the world." He said these things with the specific absolute conviction of someone who has looked at the evidence and reached a conclusion that the evidence fully supports. He is 22 years old and he is the heavyweight champion of the world, and the city of San Francisco knows he is coming before he arrives, because that is simply how Muhammad Ali moves through the world in March of 1964. Preceded by himself, he enters the Civic Auditorium through the main entrance because there is no other entrance for Muhammad Ali. 6'3" and 214 pounds of the most perfectly constructed fighting instrument the sport of boxing has yet produced. Moving through the lobby with the specific unhurried confidence of someone who has never in his life needed to hurry because the room always waits. He is wearing a dark suit and a white shirt and a thin dark tie, and he is beautiful in the specific way that physical perfection expressed through a human body is beautiful, which is completely and without apology. The people in the lobby orient toward him the way people orient toward something that produces its own gravity, not because they decide to, but because the body makes this decision before the mind is consulted. He is here for 2 hours. Photographs with organizers, a brief exhibition on the auditorium floor where he moves through his footwork for a crowd of several hundred people who watch with the specific quality of attention given to things that cannot be fully believed even while being directly observed. His hands moving at speeds that the eye registers but cannot entirely process. The specific poetry of a body that has been refined by 10,000 hours of work into something that operates at the outer boundary of what a human body can be asked to do. The charitable exhibition is winding toward its conclusion when the auditorium is joined by a group from the city's martial arts community. A scheduled demonstration, kung fu practitioners from several schools in the Bay Area, invited to perform for the remaining crowd as the boxing portion of the afternoon concludes. They arrive through the side entrance with the quiet, purposeful movement of people who have somewhere specific to be and know how to get there. Bruce Lee arrives with them. He is 23 years old, 5 feet 7 inches, and 130. 5 pounds, wearing a plain white shirt and dark trousers, moving with the specific economy that everyone who spends time around him eventually notices and then cannot stop noticing. The quality of someone who has removed everything unnecessary from every motion until what remains is only what the situation requires. He is not famous, he teaches kung fu in Seattle and Oakland to students who pay him by the hour, and he has a reputation within the specific world of West Coast martial arts that does not extend far beyond that world. Outside this room, he is a young Chinese man who teaches fighting. Inside this room, he is the same thing. The crowd that parted for Muhammad Ali does not part for Bruce Lee. He moves through the lobby the way water moves through spaces, finding the path that is available and taking it without requiring anything to rearrange itself. He finds a position near the side wall of the auditorium floor, standing rather than sitting, watching the remaining boxing demonstration with the complete attention he gives to everything that interests him. Reading the movement, reading the body producing the movement, the two streams of information arriving together and being processed together by a mind that has spent 20 years treating every motion it observes as data to be filed and evaluated, and tested against everything already known. He watches Muhammad Ali move and his expression does not change, but something behind his eyes is working. It is a member of Ali's entourage who notices him first. A broad man in a gray suit who has been managing the logistics of the afternoon, who has spent enough time around fighters to know how fighters stand, and who looks at the young Chinese man near the sidewall, and registers something in the quality of his stillness that does not match the quality of stillness in the rest of the room. He leans toward Ali and says something. Ali turns and looks. He looks with the specific quality of attention that has made him extraordinary, which is total and immediate and carrying no pretense of casualness. He looks at Bruce Lee standing near the sidewall in the plain white shirt, and he takes a moment with what he is looking at. Then the corner of his mouth moves in the way it moves when Muhammad Ali finds something interesting, which is the specific expression of someone who is never bored and is sometimes surprised and considers both of these things. Gifts. He crosses the auditorium floor with the loose authority that is simply how he moves through spaces. The crowd gives way. It always gives way. He stops in front of Bruce Lee and looks down at him from the specific altitude that 6 feet 3 inches produces when the person below is 5 feet 7. And the distance between those two numbers is present in the air between them with the simple factual weight of physics. He says he has heard of this kung fu. He says he has seen some of it demonstrated, and it looks very beautiful. He says very beautiful the way someone says something when they mean something that sits alongside what they are saying. The way that very beautiful contains within it a set of observations about the difference between what looks like fighting and what is fighting, and which of those two categories the thing being discussed belongs to. The people nearby have stopped their conversations. Ali's entourage has formed a loose semicircle at a respectful distance. The martial arts practitioners who arrived with Bruce Lee are very still in the specific way of people who have registered that something is developing and have made the collective decision to witness it without intervening. Bruce Lee looks up at him. He says that beautiful is not the point. He says it in the even unhurried tone he uses for everything. The tone that delivers exactly what it intends to deliver and nothing more. No performance, no escalation. Simply the accurate return of what has been offered. Ali blinks. It is a brief blink. The blink of someone who sent a message and received back something other than what messages of that kind usually receive. He is accustomed to people who match his energy or who shrink from it. The person standing in front of him is doing neither. The person standing in front of him is simply present without any apparent interest in what Ali's presence is supposed to produce in him. Ali looks at him for a moment with the expression of someone reassessing the dimensions of a room they thought they had already measured. Then he smiles. The full Ali smile. The one that has been on the cover of magazines, and that his opponents have seen across the ring in the last seconds before understanding that the smile was never about them. The smile of someone who has decided that the situation in front of him is more interesting than he initially gave it credit for. He says that he respects the Kung Fu man. He says this with genuine warmth because Ali's warmth is always genuine, which is one of the specific things that makes him dangerous. The way his generosity and his absolute certainty occupy the same space without contradiction. He says that Kung Fu is a fine thing for a fine man. He says he is sure it works very well against other Kung Fu men. He says this last part with the specific precision of someone who is drawing a boundary around a compliment, so that the compliment says exactly what he intends it to say and nothing beyond it. Bruce Lee listens to all of this without expression. He waits until it is finished. He says, "You are the heavyweight champion." He pauses. What does heavyweight mean? He says it not as a question but as a genuine inquiry. The flat, serious delivery of someone who is asking because they actually want the answer. Ali's smile holds, but his eyes change. The eyes of someone who has just heard something that requires recalibration. He says that heavyweight means the biggest and the strongest and the hardest hitting. He says it means that when he hits someone, they go down. He says it means that in a real contest between a real fighter and a Kung Fu man, there is no contest. And he says this with the absolute authority of someone who has stood inside that reality and found it to be exactly as simple as he is describing it. He extends his right hand, palm up, fingers open, the specific gesture of invitation. He says that Bruce Lee's Kung Fu hand should try to touch his jaw. He says that nobody on earth has touched that jaw when he did not want them to, and that this is the most tested fact he knows. He says, "Touch my jaw, Kung Fu man, land one hand on my face, and I will call you the greatest martial artist in this room." He says it looking down from 6 feet 3 with the complete physical confidence of the heavyweight champion of the world. 3 weeks from his greatest victory, to a 135-pound Kung Fu teacher from Seattle, who came through the side entrance and whom nobody in the general public has heard of. He says it the way you offer something you are absolutely certain will never actually be collected. The specific generosity of a man who knows the offer is safe. The semicircle of observers has grown. Word moves through a room the way word always moves through a room full of people who are paying attention, which is faster than sound and without any individual being able to say exactly how it traveled. Fighters and organizers and the remaining audience have oriented toward the two figures in the middle of the auditorium floor. The specific held quality of a crowd that understands it is watching something real. Bruce Lee looks at the extended hand, he looks at the jaw above it, he looks at Muhammad Ali. His expression has not changed since Ali approached him from across the floor, which is to say it is calm and direct and carrying nothing that is not necessary. He says, "All right." 2 words, the words of someone who has received an offer and accepted it without commentary, because commentary is not something he adds to moments that do not require it. Ali's hand drops slowly. He was not expecting those 2 words. He was expecting other words, the words that people produce when they are declining something while preserving the appearance of not declining. What he received were not those words. What he received was acceptance, clean and without decoration. His expression reassembles into its familiar architecture. He rolls his neck once, the small preparation of someone who is accustomed to preparing for nothing, because nothing has ever required preparation, and he takes his stance with the automatic precision of 10,000 rounds of training. The stance that is the most refined defensive structure the sport of boxing has developed over a century of refinement. Weight distributed perfectly, his chin tucked behind his left shoulder, his right hand at his cheek, every surface that matters protected by geometry that has been tested against the hardest punches the heavyweight division has ever produced and has not been found wanting. He is magnificent in this stance. This must be said plainly. Muhammad Ali in his defensive position in March of 1964 is one of the most technically perfect things the sport of fighting has ever produced. The stance is not performance. It is the honest expression of years of work made automatic through repetition until it is no longer a choice but simply what the body does when it is asked to be ready. He looks at Bruce Lee, and the expression above the tucked chin is the expression of someone doing a generous thing and knowing it is generous, and being comfortable with that knowledge. "Come on then, Kung Fu Man," he says. "Touch it if you can." Bruce Lee stands before him, no stance. The specific non-arrangement of someone who has moved so far past the need for formal positioning that the concept has become irrelevant. The body available for whatever the next moment requires without requiring any particular configuration to be available. His weight balanced in the specific way of someone who is not preparing for one thing but is prepared for anything. The difference between those two states is everything. The auditorium is very quiet. Ali's footwork begins. The specific rhythm that has bewildered every opponent he has faced, the lateral movement that makes his head a target in constant gentle motion, never where it was a fraction of a second ago, always arriving somewhere new before the eye that tracked where it was can communicate with the hand that would reach for it. The rope. A dope has not been named yet, but the principle is already in his feet, already in the loose, beautiful violence of how he occupies space. He is moving, and his jaw is moving with him, and he is watching Bruce Lee with the bright total attention of someone who is playing a game they have never lost. Bruce Lee does not chase the movement. He watches it. He reads it the way he reads everything, looking for the pattern underneath the variation, the rhythm underneath the apparent randomness, the specific repeating structure that all movement contains, because all movement is produced by a body, and all bodies operate according to principles that do not change regardless of how skillfully the body tries to conceal them. He sees it in 4 seconds, the specific quarter beat in Ali's lateral rhythm, where the weight transfers from the back foot forward before the head has completed its travel to the new position. The gap, not a large gap, not a gap that would be visible to anyone who had not spent 20 years learning to see exactly this kind of gap. A gap that exists for less time than a human blink and requires the most precise timing that human neurology can produce to enter. Bruce Lee enters it. He does not move toward Ali the way fighters move toward fighters. He does not close distance along the most direct line between 2 points because that line is exactly what Ali's defensive geometry is designed to control. He moves at an angle, a small angle, a displacement of perhaps 40 degrees from the direct line, arriving at a position that the defensive stance did not account for, because defensive stances account for what comes at them, not for what arrives beside them. His right hand moves from his side. It does not travel far. It does not need to travel far. What matters is not the distance it travels, but the precision of where it arrives and the specific transfer of force at the moment of arrival. His 2 knuckles make contact at the exact point where Ali's jaw meets the angle of his neck on the left side, the specific anatomical location where the mandible is least supported by the surrounding musculature, where the bone sits closest to the surface, where a force delivered with exact placement sends its message, not through pain but through the nervous system directly. The contact lasts less than a tenth of a second. It is not a hard punch in the sense that the word hard is used in boxing. It is not meant to be. It is a precise punch, which is a different thing entirely, a thing that requires more than hardness, a thing that requires the specific understanding of force as information, rather than force as weight. What the information says is this: the jaw is reachable, Ali's head moves. It is a small movement, but it is an honest movement. The involuntary response of a head that has received unexpected information through an unexpected channel. His chin comes up a fraction of an inch from behind his shoulder. His eyes, which have never shown surprise across a boxing ring in his professional career, show something now that is in the neighborhood of surprise, that occupies the same zip code as surprise though. It has not fully arrived there yet. He does not go down. This needs to be said clearly. Muhammad Ali does not go down. What happens is more interesting than that. What happens is that he goes still. For one full second, Muhammad Ali is completely still. The footwork stops. The lateral rhythm stops. The beautiful constant motion that has made him impossible to hit cleanly since he was a teenager in Louisville stops. And he stands in the middle of the auditorium floor with his right hand at his cheek and his left shoulder no longer fully tucked and his eyes on Bruce Lee with an expression his face has not worn in any fight photograph taken before this afternoon. The expression of someone who has just learned that a room they believe they had fully mapped contains a door they did not know was there. The auditorium does not make a sound. The semicircle of observers is holding its collective breath with the specific quality of held breath that belongs to people who understand precisely what they have just witnessed. Not the general audience of people watching something exciting, but practitioners who have spent years developing the ability to read technique and who are reading what just happened and processing what the reading means. What it means is this: the most protected jaw in the history of the heavyweight division was just touched by a man who weighs 135 pounds, who had no stance, who moved once, who did not wind up, who did not telegraph, who arrived at a position the defensive geometry did not account for, and who delivered not weight but precision, who delivered not a hammer but a key, who did not try to break the door but simply found it and opened it. Bruce Lee is standing exactly where he was standing when his hand returned to his side. His expression has not changed. The expression of someone for whom what just happened was simply what the moment required and is now complete. Ali looks at him for a long moment. Then something happens in Ali's face that does not often happen in Ali's face, which is that the architecture of absolute certainty shifts. It does not collapse. It does not disappear. It shifts the way a building shifts in an earthquake, the foundation still present, the structure still standing, but a new awareness of the ground underneath it. The specific recalibration of someone who has just stood in contact with the outer edge of their own knowledge and felt it for the first time. He drops his hands. He is quiet for a moment that is long by the standards of Muhammad Ali, who is almost never quiet, for whom language is a weapon as natural and constant as his fists. He stands in the quiet and he looks at Bruce Lee, and he is somewhere behind his eyes where people go when they are processing something that does not fit the existing file system. Then he laughs. It is a real laugh. Not the performance laugh of someone managing a situation, not the deflection laugh of someone covering discomfort, but the genuine full-body laugh of someone who has just been given an unexpected gift and is receiving it honestly. The laugh of someone whose certainty is large enough to absorb a surprise and come out larger on the other side of it. He points at Bruce Lee with one long finger and he says, "Where did that come from?" He does not ask it as a question requiring an answer. He asks it the way you address something that has just revealed itself to be more than it appeared. The specific acknowledgement of someone who has recalibrated and is naming the recalibration out loud, because that is simply how Muhammad Ali processes things. Out loud in language with the full weight of his attention. Bruce Lee looks at him and says nothing for a moment. Then he says, "Same place yours comes from." He says it in the same even tone he uses for everything. The flat delivery of something that is simply true. Ali looks at him. Then he laughs again, shorter this time. The laugh of someone receiving a second gift immediately after the first. He extends his hand, not palm up this time, not the gesture of invitation or challenge, but the hand extended forward in the specific way of one fighter acknowledging another. The horizontal offer of equals. Bruce Lee takes it, his hand disappearing inside Ali's hand the way a smaller thing disappears inside a larger thing while remaining entirely itself. Ali holds the handshake and looks at him and says, "You are fast. Man, you are genuinely fast." He says it with the tone of someone who has spent his entire career in rooms full of fast people and has a precise and accurate sense of what fast means and is applying that sense. Honestly, where are you? He says. Why have I not heard of you? Bruce Lee says he teaches in Oakland. He says there is a school on Broadway. Ali shakes his head slowly, the head shake of someone absorbing information that does not match an assumption they did not know they were making. He says that Bruce Lee should not be teaching in Oakland. He says that Bruce Lee should be somewhere that more people can see what Bruce Lee can do. He says it with the generous authority of someone who has decided that a thing is true and is stating the truth as a gift. The specific quality of Ali in 1964, who is 22 years old and has just shaken up the world and believes with complete justification that the world can be shaken up again and again, and that the instrument for shaking it up is simply finding people who are real and putting them where they can be seen. Bruce Lee listens to this. He says thank you in the brief tone of someone who receives a compliment by acknowledging it once, and then moving past it, he picks up the small bag he set down against the sidewall when he arrived. He nods once at Muhammad Ali. Then he walks toward the side exit of the Civic Auditorium with the same unhurried economy with which he entered it, moving through the reform crowd with the same frictionless passage, the same absence of announcement. He came through the side entrance and he leaves through the side exit, and the Wednesday afternoon outside on Grove Street is continuing as it was continuing before, the bay fog holding offshore, the Fillmore moving with its layered energy, entirely indifferent to what happened inside this particular building. Ali watches him go. He watches the side door for a moment after it has closed. Then he turns back to the room, and the room is watching him with the specific quality of attention of people who want to know what he will say. He says nothing for a moment. He looks at the side door. He looks at the space on the auditorium floor, where the exchange happened, the specific square of wood that received those 2 seconds. Then he says, to no one in particular and to everyone present, that man is real. He says it with the flat certainty he uses for things he has tested and found to be true. Not performance. Not generosity. Fact. His entourage moves to regroup around him. The afternoon is reassembling itself. There are photographs still to be taken and obligations still to be met. And Muhammad Ali is always capable of returning to the surface of a situation and operating there with complete effectiveness regardless of what is happening underneath. But something has changed in the room. The people who were present will argue for years about exactly what they saw, whether the punch truly landed cleanly, whether Ali's reaction was genuine or mannerly, whether the exchange meant what it appeared to mean or something less than that. They will have these arguments because that is what people do with things they witness that do not fit neatly into existing categories. They argue about the edges of the category because they cannot argue about the center. The center is this. In a room in San Francisco on a Wednesday afternoon in March of 1964, Muhammad Ali, 3 weeks from the greatest moment of his young life, extended his jaw to a 135-pound kung fu teacher from Oakland, and the jaw was touched. Once precisely, without drama, by a hand that came from a direction the most sophisticated defensive geometry in the history of the heavyweight division had not accounted for. And when it happened, the greatest fighter in the world went still. The fog comes back in off the bay that evening, the way it always comes back, slow and total and indifferent to what the city did while it was away. It covers the Embarcadero and moves up the hills, and by 10 o'clock San Francisco is the city it always is at night in March, cold and white and beautiful, and not explaining itself to anyone. On Broadway in Oakland, the lights of a small kung fu school are on late into the night, the way they are most nights. A young man inside moving through forms that nobody watching from the street would be able to fully read. The movement too fast and too specific and too dense with information to be decoded without a specific kind of education. But the movement is visible through the window, the shape of it, the commitment of it, the specific quality of someone who is always working because the work is never finished, because nothing is ever finished if you are paying the right kind of attention. A man who, 3 hours ago, touched a jaw that nobody touches, and who is now, with the complete indifference to his own achievement that is one of the most particular things about him, working on the thing that comes next, because there is always something that comes next, because the work does not pause for what it has just accomplished, because that is simply what the work is, as it was, as it will always be.